I was focusing a lot in the meditation on beginning again. And I know we did a talk, I have a Dharma talk, and it's on Insight Timer, just recently about beginning again, or we did it maybe a month ago, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Because it really is such an important practice and such an important reminder for us. Because it's so easy when we get lost in our thoughts, when we get lost in doubting ourselves, lost in our trying to control something, lost in and just some criticism that someone had given us, lost in our problems. It's so easy to get lost in these things, and that our practice isn't to say that we shouldn't get lost in these things. Our practice is just to keep beginning again. No judgment. That's what really beginning again means. Not to judge ourselves because we had a judging thought, not to judge ourselves because we were comparing ourselves to someone else, or because we were having an unkind thought towards someone else or ourselves. It's simply to recognize that we got lost and begin again, a clean slate, a fresh start. Because if we don't begin again, then we're still lost. Right? We have to begin again. And it really does. The more that you embrace beginning again, letting go of the tendency to beat yourself up because you did get lost in some thought stream, the more you are saying, each time you begin again, you are saying, I'm trusting this moment more than I'm trusting my thoughts. Right? We trust our thoughts. We believe our thoughts so easily, so readily. But if you pull your attention away, begin again, take a breath, feel what's happening in your body, starting again. You're saying, I trust this more. And we really need to add up a lot more trust here. Be more skeptical of the thoughts. Be more skeptical of the lies of our ego thoughts. How our thoughts, our ego, always pointing our attention outwards. The problem is always out there. Right? Or even if it's pointing, the problem is that I'm a loser. The problem is that I'm messed up. I'm not as spiritual as I thought I was. I'm not as enlightened as I thought I was, right? That's not the problem. The problem is that we're believing the thought. So to bring our attention back inwards, it's what it's pointing to, even when it's pointing at us and saying we're the problem, it's still sending us on a wild goose chase, because it's saying, if I were just more spiritual, if I were just smarter, if I just were a better person, then I would be happy. But we know the ego lives in dissatisfaction. It's not looking for a solution, even though it sends us on this wild goose chase of looking for a thought-created solution to the thought-created problem. Right? It'll send us on wild goose chases. It's not looking for a solution. The solution is, the thought that I'm doubting myself right now, the thought that I'm judging myself, belittling myself, being harsh to myself. That's the problem. Because in the absence of that thought, of doubting myself, of judging myself, of belittling myself, I no longer feel small. I no longer feel that sense of lack. It's the thought. And so using all of our practice as self-compassion, oh, sweetheart, I see the doubting. I see it. Right? You're okay. Right? Talk yourself back down. Breathe, feel. Pay attention and begin again. Begin again. Your thoughts, your ego thoughts, are at best slight exaggerations. At worst, outright lies. And I would argue they're mostly outright lies. And they simply take us away from knowing the peace that is always here. The peace that's here because we are already whole. We are already complete. We already belong, right? We think we don't belong, right? Thinking, sense of separation, right? Just the thinking, I'm separate and I feel separate. I've separated from myself, splitting myself into two, and I feel separate from everything else around me. And yet the reality is we are all connected, interdependent. But thought convinces us that somehow we are not, and then sends us out on that wild goose chase looking to try and find that sense of wholeness and sense of completeness that is right here, right now. I mean, it's really, if aliens were looking down on us, they would look and go, wow, look at these humans. We can see how connected they all are, how they're all arising. We can see it in this big picture. How they're all interdependent, arising together in each moment. The weather affecting them, the other animals affecting them, their biology affecting them. All these things causing them to arise. They're part of this microcosm. They're all a part of it. But look at them in their little minds. None of them believes it. None of them believe reality. They're all running around in their minds like little frightened squirrels. And yet they're perfectly safe. Most of them are perfectly safe, are fine. I mean, it's really, it's like the biggest con. Right before our eyes, we can see we are connected. That we belong. How can we not belong? How could we not be a part of this? Every thought you think, every feeling, every act is affecting the tapestry. It's all affecting it. You're affecting me. I'm affecting you. Rosa's affecting us. Robin, Kevin, Mari, Sue, Lisa, Libby. Everyone's affecting each other. How can we keep believing that we're not a part of this, and we keep believing that somehow I'm the only one that's not a part of this. Everyone else is a part of this, but somehow there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. There's something incomplete about me, uniquely. None of us are broken. We all belong. It's not to say that we don't have challenges in our lives, and some of us have got bigger challenges than others. Things that need to be done in the external world, deadlines that need to be met, right? Not saying that none of that's true. Everyone has that. But to not get too lost in all of that, as though it's all so important, as though it all matters. Yeah, take care of the things that need to get taken care of. But the most important thing, and it's why I ask the question so much in the meditation, what is it that's most important? What do you want to feel? And invariably the answer is some variation of the word peace, connection, belonging, contentment, love. Not saying romantic love, that love of that we're all connected, that we're all in this together. Right? That this is what we want. And so while we're going about living our lives, and sometimes we have good conditions and sometimes we're experiencing unpleasant conditions, but that we know the feeling of peace can only be found inside. In the absence of the pushing back on the unpleasant, not saying we can't do something to change, if something's going wrong, fix it. The glass broke, clean it up. But don't get lost in a story. I can't believe I broke the glass. I wasn't very mindful back there. I'm such a bad practitioner. Not getting lost in the story of that. Glass broke. It's the nature of all glasses to break eventually. All right, that's what the Zen master sees. The cup is already broken. So when it breaks, no problem. See, the cell phone is already scratched. So when it gets scratched, no problem. You see, the car is already scratched, the brand new car. See our relationships as always changing. Sometimes we're closer, sometimes we're not. Sometimes there's a little misunderstanding going on with someone. Doesn't mean that we don't reach out to them and try and clear up the misunderstanding, but not from this grasping, I need this relationship to be back to its highest point in order to feel the peace, because the peace is not dependent upon that. The peace is always here. It is always here. It is the absence of the pushing back and the absence of the grasping, of the chasing, of the wanting. Right? The absence of I need this over here in order to feel complete. I need that person's validation. I need this person to change. I need to change. I need to be someone else before I can love myself, before I can be okay. Right? We set these conditions up as though we need these things. If I can just push that which is unpleasant away and just get that which I see as pleasant, then I'll be happy. It is a lie. You will be happy for a fleeting moment, mostly because the thought went away. The thought that I needed something to happen outside of me to feel peace went away. The peace is always here in the absence of the grasping mind. It is always here. But we so trust the grasping mind more than we trust the sense of ease and calm that is here in this moment. We're so used to being in that little ball, walking around like that. What's going to drop? What's going to drop next? Holding on to what happened last week, last year. We're so used to walking around like that. We think that's normal. And we think we're holding it all together. We're not. We're just holding on to tension that's not necessary, obscuring the peace that is right here, right now. The peace that we say is most important to us. Because in the peace, we feel the sense of belonging, of connection. In the peace, we feel that spaciousness, that ease. The limitations that the little ego mind puts on us, they're gone, right? Because the ego is all about, being finite and small and lacking and limited. We take all that away. Even as we have to go about our day and things are breaking and aches and pains arise, not every moment, but of course we all experience it. And not every day a relationship is in need of repair. But still, relationships, some are a little closer than others, right? That's the way relationships are. Nothing stays the same. Nothing stays the same. So this idea that somehow I could push this thing away that's unpleasant, and that there won't be something unpleasant coming up, next month behind it. Like, of course, there's going to be another unpleasant experience next month. I stub my toe. The car breaks down. I get sick. Someone I love gets sick. Of course, there's going to be, we're not stopping the flow of having unpleasant experiences. It's that pushing back on them. But we believe that if I could just get this one thing out of the way, then I could be happy for a moment. And then things are going to change again. And of course, the reality is for most of us, while we do have the car breaks or we get the scratch on the iPhone or, the little unpleasant things of life, they're not life or death. They're, we get we get a little dose of COVID, we get a little cold, right? That's really a pretty small part of our experience. Most of what we're pushing back on, we're just making up in our minds. It's not even happening. We're just imagining all the things that can be going wrong, believing the little VR headset more than we're believing the reality of being here, perfectly safe, perfectly fine, perfectly whole, right? We believe what's happening in the VR headset more, the little avatar in there. Oh no, what's happening to Meredith there? She's not getting what she wants. Someone else is getting it ahead of her. Oh no. Oh, she's getting now what she doesn't want. Right? All this time believing up there, and she wants peace, she wants peace, she wants it so desperately. So let's just keep spinning around in this little virtual reality, imagining how she might find it, racing and getting there and trying to control and move all these things around in our minds. For a moment to think we got there, oh yeah, that would be it. But no, and then we go back through it again and again and again. And if we'd only just take the VR headset off, notice that we're lost in it, begin again. Oh, I'm back, I'm okay. Whew. A minute ago, I believed that I was broken and unworthy and had no friends and had no future and was just hopeless, right? A minute ago, I so believed all that. Whew. Good thing I put the headset down. And now I'm here and I'm looking around. I'm seeing all your little avatars go across, seeing your comments. I'll get to those in just a moment. I'm hearing the sounds. I can hear the sounds of the birds here. I don't know if you can hear that through the microphone. Right? And it's like, I'm here, I'm okay. I'm okay again. Begin again, begin again. Put the headset down. It's not bringing you the peace that you think it is. Be more skeptical of what you're imagining in your thoughts and more trusting of this. And just keep beginning again, coming back again and again and again. Okay, I'll take a little look at some comments. And please, for anyone that's new here too, feel free at this point, add any questions or put in any questions in the comments. Anything that's going on in your, any place that you feel stuck. Any place that you feel stuck, let's address it. And wherever you're feeling stuck, someone else is feeling that as well. So you're helping someone else by asking the question. So, hi Sandy from, I think, British Columbia. Hi, Angus. Good to see you here. And yes, the yin and the yang. Yes, from Angus. Yeah, the yin and the yang. I mean, there's so much, in the opposites of the yin and the yang. But what I really like to take away from the yin and the yang is the action and then the receiving, right? The stillness, right? All of the actions that we're doing here by coming to Dharma talks, just all the gratitude practices, reading the books, right? Taking in that information, and then the receiving, the stillness, which happens in our meditation practice, which happens when we really are just present. The mind, we don't always have to be thinking about the Dharma. It's not going to come into a place of knowing if we're always thinking about it. There's a time for thinking about the Dharma. There's a time for contemplation, absolutely. And then the yin of the stillness, of the receiving, of allowing that information to go from an intellectual down into a place of knowing. A really important part of our practice. Listen to the Dharma talks, read the books, absolutely. And then afterwards, have some silence. If it's within for some of you, I know you're on just a lunch break right now, and you maybe don't have as much time, but maybe jump off the call 5 minutes before you would need to get back to work so that you can just sit in silence and let the words just become absorbed into your nervous system. Right? We need that receiving part of our practice as well. Such an important part. Thank you for kind of planting that seed, Angus. See, all interconnected, interdependent. And I'm just going to jump just because I saw you pop in again, Angus. And then I'll come back to these other questions. Sorry, I think Sandy and Rosa. Thanks. Yeah, and just for Angus, you're not new, but have a beginner's mind. Don't ever get cocky in this practice. That's the ego. That's the ego. Even if you're having periods of time where you're really feeling present, you're really feeling like, wow, this is just, it's nice. You're really feeling like you're flowing. Little things that used to drive you nuts aren't driving you nuts so much. You just really feel the sense of, man, she's talking about that ego. And yeah, I can see it. I can see I used to do that. Man, not happening anymore. It's always really good to just be like, well, it hasn't happened for a while, but it could come back. It could come back. And I think the more that we have that beginner's mind when we're hearing something, even like you said, you're not new. Most of you aren't new to this practice, right? But to have that beginner's mind that you're still willing to learn, right? That we should all be willing to learn, right? No matter you're the teacher or the student, the teacher should always be the student as well, right? Because there's always something to learn. This is a continuous pulling back of the veil. I mean, we kind of have this idea, I think in the beginning, at least I had this idea that there was kind of this peak experience you were going to have of enlightenment, that there was something here that was going to be enlightened and all would be revealed. And it's just not like that. It's just this continuous peeling back. And it gets, because you just couldn't even begin to comprehend some of those first few layers early on in our practice, right? It's like you get there and then you're like, oh, I thought it was at the top. And then you go, oh no, look at all that. There's so much more. The Buddha even said when he was walking through the forest with some of his monks, and the forest was covered in leaves, and he picked up a handful of leaves and he said, I want you to think of the Dharma as all of the leaves on this forest. And what I'm teaching you is just what I've picked up here in my hand. Really trying to say there is so much more. And I think what he was trying to impress upon there is, don't ever assume you know it all. Because as soon as we start doing that, the ego is just snuck back in another door. Look at me. I got all this down. I know what's going on here, right? And then we close our minds up, right? And we think, oh, I couldn't learn from them. They haven't been practicing as long as me. We can learn from anyone. We can learn from someone who has never been to a Dharma talk, never meditated once in their life. We can always learn. We can learn from our dogs, from our cats, from children, from the weather, from the birds, from the scorpions. My teachers here, the scorpions. So just a great point on that, on the beginner's mind. Angus, thank you. Okay, and I'm going to come back to your second question here, Angus, in a moment. And just Rosa, I'm glad to hear. So you're still there. Okay, great. Walking and eating a lot. And it can be overwhelming, but fun. And I think you're there with your sisters. It's really good to remember that when we're on holiday and we're visiting family or even friends or in whatever setting, to also just to have that little bit of time alone. You come back from a walk, from lunch, and just to say, hey, I'm just going to go take a few minutes just to have some quiet, just to have some space, right? Because you will enjoy the conditions more. We tend to think, well, it's got to be all 100%, when it's quality over quantity. So just as a little reminder there for you. But I'm glad you're having fun. Okay. So to Sandy, where you were saying, maybes can consume me. Maybes can consume me. So I think what you might be saying like this, yeah, well, maybe this, maybe that, what ifs, maybe you might be the what ifs kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, we can get so lost. Well, maybe that's true, or maybe I should be doing this, or what if over there? And again, it's where we can get a little bit lost in this simulation machine, not a machine, our prefrontal cortex, right? Where we can get a little lost in it. Because every maybe, every what if is pulling you out of reality and back into the virtual reality. And in that virtual reality, and I've been using that analogy lately of the VR headset, in that virtual reality, our ego, the separate self, while we're running through all these maybes or these what-if scenarios, we are feeling small, lacking, limited, afraid, somehow uniquely different and separate from everyone. Like we think, oh, I'm going through all this. This is smart. This is good for my survival. This is going to make me happy. What it's doing is making us unhappy now. And we're trusting the virtual reality more than we're trusting reality. The reality that we can experience directly through our senses. So it's good to be mindful of that. It's good to be aware of that. Okay, maybes can consume you. Great, you know that about yourself. That is a huge leap just to know that. That's where I spend a lot of time. It's good to know where our minds go, right? That's what we should be paying attention to in mindfulness as well. When we're noting, there's the maybe mind again. There it is. 10 minutes later, there's the maybe mind again. Begin again, come back. There's the planning mind again. There it is. There's the rehearsing what I'm going to say or what I'm going to write in my email again, right? There it is. There's this used to be the biggest one for me, and I'm mindful that it could come back. They're going to come and try and bother me and take me away from my peace, or they're going to, this really stems from my RV days when I was traveling in the RV before I settled down here in Mexico. Always this fear that I would be on my own in my RV, and I would be, in my mind, though, irritated, thinking someone's going to come and try and interrupt my peace because no one really understood that I wanted to be on my own. But I was the one driving myself nuts. And I had to see that. No one is here disturbing me. I'm disturbing me. I had to keep seeing that. I'm the one disturbing me. I'm the one taking away my privacy and peace and calm. So the more that we can identify the ways in which our minds keep consuming us, and I have this as a teaching. There's a talk on Insight Timer about this, about creating your top 10 playlist of the most recurring thoughts for you. Do you push back most, or are you chasing more often? We're doing both, mind you, and you're really doing both at the same time, but one can feel stronger than the other. One can have we can get a greater sense of an object of pushing back, right? If I'm pushing back on people asking me to do things because I think it's going to interrupt my privacy or my peace, what I'm really desiring is to be left alone. And interestingly enough, what I'm feeling in that moment is totally disconnected. Because even in wanting to be alone, and I do spend a great deal of time on my own, I want the feeling of connection. We need that feeling of connection. Being alone doesn't mean you're lonely. When you're alone and you're present, you feel that sense of connection and wholeness with everything. But interestingly enough, every time we push back, maybe you're not feeling included in something, you're feeling in some way you've been rejected. So you're feeling that sense of disconnection, of feeling somehow something's wrong with you, right? You're the only one in the world that's feeling rejection. And we get so lost in our thoughts trying to find that sense of connection. And it's not in the thoughts of trying to find, the thoughts are what's creating the sense of disconnection. It's not even the rejection. It's not even in the rejection. Of course, it hurts to be rejected. And we use self-compassion. Oh, sweetheart, that hurt. That hurt. That sucked. That was painful. Let's be with it. Breathe. Be with it. Right? We're not trying to push it away. Allow the feeling to move through you. We're not expecting it. We weren't expecting to be rejected, right? Or to be excluded from something, or to just feel kind of slighted in some way. You weren't expecting it. Breathe, feel it, allow it to move through you. Everything is changing. And then as you're with your experience, feeling what's happening, coming on the other side of it then, as your nervous system starts to bounce back out, you're not in the story anymore about how I was rejected or excluded or not included, right? You're not lost in the story. You feel connected and whole. Yeah, this person excluded you or rejected us for some reason, right? But you don't feel as though there is something wrong with you, as though somehow you don't belong anymore. But up in the story where we're desperate to try and get back to that sense of belonging, it's the story that is preventing us from feeling the sense of belonging. It's not dependent upon whether everyone includes us in everything or whether we're never rejected, because everyone gets rejected from time to time. It's just part of the world that we live in. We live in a world where the number of relationships that we know, so many people, more than is normal for humans to experience. When you think about for tens of thousands of years living in tribes, maybe 30, 40, 50, 60 people in a tribe, right? But the same people your whole life, right? I mean, of course, some die and some are born, but the same people there. It's not this little group over here and this little clique, and I was excluded from that little clique, or I wasn't invited to the little party over here, right? So, we had this sense of belonging really built into how we used to live. And it's the way that we live now. And of course, when the ego started to really explode, when we started to take ownership of things, when things became mine and the other things were yours, and I want to get more because the ego is insatiable, right? There was, out of this is this great sense of not belonging, of not feeling connected. And we want to feel that sense of connection, that we all belong. We really do. That is a part of when you are present, the peace that is here in the present moment, that is your true nature, is because you recognize you belong. There's nothing lacking in you. All the lacking is coming from the thoughts. From the maybes, from the what ifs, and what if they don't like me, and what if this. So I'd really encourage you, encourage all of you, if you haven't done it already, to go back and write out your top 10 playlists. So Sandy, definitely write out. You can just put maybes, or you can put maybe a couple of the type of maybes. If it's maybe around health, maybe around work, maybe around finances, maybe around romantic partners, your spouse. If you can be a little clearer, great, because the clearer you are, and the more you can put it down ahead of time, then when it comes up and you notice it and you're like, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. I know this is on my top 10 playlist. And if you're prepared for it, it doesn't like sneak up on you the way it normally does. And then the practice is begin again. I see it. I see you, Mara, right? Breathe and come back. Come back into the body. Take those 10 breaths. Feel what's happening, because there's a little tension with it, with the maybes and the what ifs. And come back. And after 10 breaths, of course, you can investigate and ask yourself, well, was there something useful there? I know it was on the top 10 playlist, and I had to pull myself out of it. And now I'm here and I'm feeling more grounded and I'm feeling safe and I'm feeling whole and complete again. Was there anything useful in there? I mean, maybe there was something useful to do, but to be looking at it, not lost in it, more from that objective of being more skeptical. Is it useful? We assume from the get-go that it is. 99 times out of 100, it's not. It's just a pattern repeating itself of going over all the what ifs, going over all the maybes. Just the same patterns, again, the same patterns that we all have our favorite, not favorite, that's probably not the right word, but our most recurring thoughts. And so and I'm seeing V, sorry, your question here. The top 10 playlist of just your top 10 most recurring thoughts. to just be more familiar with what they are, right? Because again, there's a pattern, there's a trend. And we just keep playing the same thoughts over and over. 90%, 95% of the thoughts you're having today, you had yesterday, the day before that, the day before that. We're just rehashing the same thoughts. Yes, the individuals change sometimes, but the scenarios are basically the same plots over and over and over. And it just hooks us in again each time, believing it. So by stepping back and really writing down, and they may not all come to you at once, right? Because then you're like, when you're looking for them, sometimes you're like, oh, I can't find it. But okay, for today, I'm going to keep this little notepad with me. And when I'm getting lost in a thought, I'm going to write it down. Maybe it's a top 10. Maybe it's just, probably is a top 10. I'll just write them down. And at the end of the day, I'll take a look at them. And then I'll see, is this my top 10 playlist? And maybe I do it over 2 or 3 days. And then you have your top 10 playlist and you're like, this is what's going on. This is what I keep thinking about. I keep going through these what if scenarios, all these maybes. I keep imagining problems, looking for thought-created solutions to my thought-created imaginary problems to appease an imaginary self, my little avatar, that is only satisfied for a moment before it goes, but what else? Now let's go to maybe number 2. Now let's go to maybe number 3. Now I thought of a new maybe. Because the ego, and I know I'm going back and forth, the avatar, our ego, our separate self, all the same thing. The thought created me. It only lives in dissatisfaction. It doesn't live. That's not a good way of saying it. Only arises and sustains itself in dissatisfaction. Because once the problem is really solved, the thoughts go away, the maybes go away, the what ifs go away. But most of the time, because it's not really anything that's happening, we can keep just moving the goalpost. Well, no, now it's this, now it's this, now it's this. And we just go round and round and round, lost up in this imaginary world, not living in the reality, not seeing what's really going on. That really, and again, I always want to caveat this because I know there are people in the world right now that are living in war zones, that are living with famine. There are people that are barely able to put food on the table for themselves, for their kids. And so not everyone has survived. But for many of us, we have survived. We have the good conditions to practice spirituality because we have survived. And to be able to see the world that we live in, how beautiful it really is. Beautiful in its interconnectedness, in its interdependence. Just you walk past a stranger, you walk past a homeless person, and you smile and you connect with them. Right? Looking them in the eyes because you realize they're another human being, and there but go I for the grace that it could have been me, because it could have been. Right? And really seeing another human being and having that moment of connection, it's so beautiful. Right? That this acknowledgement that we are all influencing each other. Right? That we are all a part of this tapestry. And not just us, but everything in this planet. The rocks, the mountains, the rivers, the clouds, the rainbows, the butterflies, the birds. Like it's all this, how everything is arising in each moment when you really step back and the zoom lens, instead of being this little zoom lens into my little alternate reality of what's happening to Meredith up here, opening it up and seeing and looking up, the more we can look up as well. Because we take it all in and we're like, this is an amazing ride. I've got to stop believing this little me up here because it's stopping me, it's preventing me from enjoying the ride that's right here and now. We don't have to wait till we're on our deathbeds to realize that we wasted our lives chasing and pushing back on life. and not appreciating what we have in each moment. And I'm not saying like, if your leg's broken, don't have a gratitude practice because your other leg isn't broken. Like, yeah, it sucks. Go take care of it, right? It's part of life, but being open always to say, well, let's see where the adventure goes now. The leg's broken. I can't, you were planning on going on some hiking trip and you can't go. Okay, well, let's see. There's something else here. Being open, because we look, again, in this little virtual reality, we look at the world in such a binary way. It's good or bad. It can only be one thing, and that is not reality. It's not only one thing. It's multiple things. It's in the present moment, it's endless potential. And what might be on the surface, yes, there's something bad happening, someone's sick, someone's dying, right? But even in that, there's something to connect with that person there, right? There's something beautiful that can be happening even in that which is unpleasant. We'll just say unpleasant. That which we wouldn't want to happen, but it does happen. We lose people. And we're so focused in our little virtual reality of how this is going to affect me, we forget that there's something here to connect with. There's something for me to feel inside, the loss of someone, not the story of it, but the loss, to feel. That's real. That's real. I should feel that. I should know how to feel that. And so a simple, I think a more practical way for us to, or one of the practical ways for us to get a handle on these thoughts of how we keep getting lost in this virtual reality, is knowing what are the stories, what's the top 10 playlist of what we're playing. Right? I mean, it's literally like we have this box of cassettes, right? Or cassettes, that's kind of sounding, of CDs, right? And we literally, let's play doubt today. Let's play that for the next hour. Let's doubt ourselves. Oh, let's play worried for the future, worried about our finances. Let's play that for 30 minutes because we haven't played that for a couple hours. Oh, let's play what do they think about me? Oh, I haven't played that one for a while. Let me put that one in, right? And we just keep playing these same CDs over and over and over again. And every time they pop in our heads, every time they start, those stories start going, our attention goes right to it. And we believe that that's reality. But when you start noticing, oh, there it is. There's what do they think of me with a bullet to number 1, right? You start to bring more awareness to it in a way that I find can also be quite playful, like kind of laughing. There it is. What do they think of me? Yep, I see you, Mara. I see you. Breathe, come back. A little compassion, self-compassion. Come back, be with what's happening, allow it to move through you. There is so much power in having it written on the list ahead of time. And go back and add things, right? Change things, because then it's like one of the maybes for you, Sandy, maybe falls off the list. Right? It's like, I've handled that maybe. Now I've seen it so many times. I'm so clear that the problem isn't what I think is going to happen, is that I'm imagining all of the things that are going to happen, that particular maybe. And then add a new one on. Don't go above 10. That's a little bit too much to manage, but definitely paying attention to the contents of what the types of stories are that we're telling ourselves, the one they are recurring over and over and over again. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to add to your comment here, V. Is it limiting beliefs? All of those thoughts are limiting. They're all limiting. Okay, I'll just go back here. And thank you, Rosa. I'm glad that the meditation was calming and peaceful. Okay, I just want to go to Angus's point here, that I spoke on something that you were experiencing today. You had sent a message and felt it wasn't heard or addressed, but other messages on the text were being responded to. For a second, you felt like you weren't being heard and had to re-enter. Texting is such a... there's so many misunderstandings that happen through texting. It really is a minefield. Be careful on texting. I'm not saying don't do it because it's useful. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I mean, that should go on everyone's top 10 playlist. Misunderstanding a text, right? Didn't get the response that I wanted. Didn't get the enthusiasm that I wanted. Didn't respond in time, right? All of those ways that they come under, like just, you could put misunderstanding of a text. To notice it. Oh, there it is. Misunderstanding a text or an email. Breathe into it, feel it, pull yourself out of it. Because if you get pulled into it too quickly, the next thing you know, you're a victim. Like, that's what happens. That's the way we're painting the picture. I'm a victim. Look, everyone else is getting responded to. And they're purposefully not responding to me, right? That's how our thoughts skew a text that for some reason, everyone got a little focused on one versus yours, but we raise it to this level of, I'm being ignored, I'm not being heard, I'm being excluded, therefore, I'm being rejected, I'm being kicked out of the tribe somehow. Like we take something like that is most likely benign. Conventionally, we would say it's just mostly benign, misunderstanding. But it just, even if they were, it was happening on purpose. What can you do? Right? Like, we take everything so personally. And conventionally, I will say 99 times out of 100, it's a misunderstanding. It has nothing to do with us. People don't realize they have no control over where their attention's going to one text on the thread versus another, and how that all kind of locks them in very quickly, right? And yet we take it so personally. And even if someone is, they're specifically, they are, you've texted them, there's one person on the thread, they're ignoring you. You see them out with their phone on their phone. They've seen it. Maybe you've got the check mark that they've read. And it feels so personal, as though you're being personally attacked. And I'm going to add on my answer to this to really answer Hillary here. I'm going to answer the second part. Because we think that we have free will. And we think everyone else has free will. That there is something independent or solid inside of them that they chose to specifically target out, that part of me that's independent and solid, that's broken, there's something wrong with it. That somehow there was something here independent that targeted something there independent. When everyone is arising based on causes and conditions, if for some reason someone's ignoring your text, and again, I'm not saying that some of those causes and conditions can't be related to something you had done in the past, which you had no free will over. Right? Free will, and I do want to be clear about this, free will meaning there is something independent that could choose differently. So when we say we have free will, and by the way, free will is the ego always coming in afterwards to claim why I did something, right? To rationalize it, to give excuses. That sense that there's a little me, that sense that I have free will, as though there's something here that is outside of this interdependence and interconnectedness of this world, that we could look and see how a plant is interconnected, interdependent. There's nothing independent about a plant or a tree or the weather or the mountains or the rivers, the oceans. We can look and see how everything on this planet, that there is nothing independent about it, having its own each person having their own unique experience based on all of the millions and billions and conditions of different causes and conditions that have made up the life of Meredith, that are different, that cannot be repeated. No one has had the exact same experiences. I have not had the exact same experiences as Hillary. Hillary has not had the exact same experiences as me. Libby, who's on this call, my sister, even though we grew up together, still did not have the exact same experiences, right? Everyone having their own unique vantage point of this experience, but interdependent and interconnected. Everything we do is based on all of the causes and conditions that are arising in that moment. And thought comes in afterwards to claim, I did that, I chose that. As though we do we choose our likes and our dislikes? No, we don't choose those. Can we choose? Can we wake up in the morning and say, I choose to be happy today? And no matter what happens, no matter if someone doesn't respond to my text, someone's unkind to me, my car breaks down, I break my leg, no matter what happens, I'm only going to choose to have happy thoughts, and I'm going to choose that for the rest of my life. We don't choose that because we don't know what thought's going to pop into our head next. We don't know. And even we'd say, well, but now we're teaching being mindful and beginning again, right? That's a condition. That's a condition that sometimes you remember, begin again, you come back, and sometimes you don't, based on the causes and conditions, based on how stressed you are in that moment, whether you had a good night's sleep, whether you meditated that morning or not. Because when you got up, maybe your partner was sick and you weren't able to meditate. You were sick. Your dog was sick. A pipe burst in the house, right? All of these things, all of these millions and billions and trillions of things. And we sit here and claim that, no, I chose that. Why you like a particular food? You didn't choose to like a particular food. You could say, well, I was brought up on this food. At the first time I ever tasted this food, it was at this really special occasion. And all of these conditions causing you to like a particular food. You don't choose your likes, you don't choose your dislikes. And therefore, when we understand this, and I have a couple talks on my teacher's page about this, about free will, because this is the part of spirituality that is not discussed very much. We're talking always about the separate self and the ego, and I think in almost every tradition, Eastern tradition at least, we're talking about the separate self, this being the obstacle to knowing the peace, that you are not separate. You are a part of this. And then we go, oh yeah, I don't want to be that ego. I don't want to be in those thoughts of constantly going through the what if, maybe situations. What do they think about me? Worrying about whether I've been rejected, comparing myself to others, judging myself, judging others. I don't like any of that. I don't want to be that separate self. And we intellectually will take that on and go, yep, you're right. I don't want to be that separate self. Well, the free will implies that you are somehow separate. It's the same thing. And yet we hold on to that. You're not seeing reality. If you think there is a part of you that is separate and independent, you are not seeing reality. And the implications for understanding this, when we recognize that everyone is arising through their causes and conditions, just as you are arising through your causes and conditions, the beauty of it, the connection, the recognizing how you're, all the conditions that brought you on this call, Hillary, right, that brought you to Insight Timer, going back to all those conditions, to this particular live class, to this particular, then asking the question, something prompted, and then you start writing the question out, that then it was Angus's, I think we were on Angus's question, and I saw I could just make out the free will, and I'm like, yep, that's where I want to go on the answer. Like you directing, you participating in the direction of where this call is going. I mean, seeing the beauty of this, of how we are all arising interdependent and interconnected, is amazing. And what we let go of when we understand that, because all of that regret, right, about what I did in the past, the choices I've made, the decisioning that's happened, no decision maker, right? It all goes away. I couldn't have done anything differently. Most people walk around with regrets. Someone had mentioned it before, and I've talked about this book many times by Bonnie Ware, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, where she's with people. She's a hospice care nurse in Australia. And you know, as she's with people, as they're dying, they're sharing their regrets, right? The number one regret: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself instead of what others expected of me. What's stopping us there? What's limiting us from living our lives the way we want to live them? The ego, right? There was the regret of, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd spent more time on relationships, right? Imagine this is on your deathbed now, all the regrets that you're having in your life, and that we carry around with us throughout our entire lives. So much regretting choices and decisions that we made. But when you understand, I couldn't have done anything differently. There wasn't something in here that could have, that independent, that could have made a different choice. That whatever, all of the conditions that were arising, all of the past experiences, the memories, the brain processes that are happening in that moment, that all of a sudden it goes bing, and you go one direction versus another, right? I mean, it's such a, you're about to do one thing, you get the call from someone, something, no, I'm going to do something else. It is amazing how, when you see this, and really paying attention to it, when you're making a choice, a simple choice, between 2 drinks, 2 equal type drinks, not kale and soda or something, but 2 equal kind of drinks. Noticing your hand going for one or the other. You're standing in front of the refrigerator, the door's open. Really pay attention to that choicing happening, the hand reaching out. Just pay attention to see what is really happening here. Because understanding that there is nothing independent, choicing happening, decisioning happening based on all your past experiences, based on your memories, how you're feeling at that particular moment, based on your views, your opinions, your beliefs, all of that stuff influencing it, right? And all unique, right? It gets filtered through Meredith a little bit different than Jeff, than Hillary, than V, than Sue. It all gets filtered through a little bit differently, right? But understanding this, we let go of regrets. We have genuine compassion for even those that are harming us, even for them, because we understand they are the result of their causes and conditions. It's not personal. We also have the wisdom to set a boundary around someone that's being harmful, to understand I'm not going to hang out with that person anymore, but to not have any ill will in my heart towards them because they are suffering. And if I had all of their causes and conditions, I would have done the exact same thing. The exact same thing. And it gives us the freedom to accept who we are, with all our warts and bruises and bumps, lumps, because each of us is the result of millions and billions and trillions of different causes and conditions. The things that you know, if you're kind, if you're loving, if you're compassionate, it's because people were kind and loving and compassionate to you. Or it's maybe because even just the suffering that happened that led you onto a path that then you found a kind and loving and compassionate spiritual path that helped guide you. And the parts of you that we all have something a little strange about us. Every one of us has something a little bit strange. It's not you independent, something wrong with you. It's the causes and conditions. Again, if we're harming someone, and because we're being more mindful, being more aware of this, that cause and condition, right? Bringing more awareness to it, that's more likely with compassion for ourselves. I can see why I do that. I can see where that habit came from. And I need to be more mindful of that, to try and, notice when it's happening and begin again. Put it on the top 10 playlist. I beat myself up about that, and then begin again. And just to keep doing that again and again and again. Yeah, I can see something, Lisa. I try to over-explain my weirdness. Yeah, don't have to over-explain it. We don't, even a great point, like, we are so quick to explain to someone. Like, I'm trying to think of an example when maybe you've run out to the store and you didn't have time to shower and you run into someone, and immediately we're all over ourselves apologizing for how we look. It's so, why do we have to apologize for that? Or just even we're late or something happened, just to say, I'm so sorry I'm late. But we feel this need to justify and explain every little thing. And I was thinking this and I was doing that. And it's I'm so sorry I kept you waiting. I'm so sorry. I hope you know that wasn't my intention. Right? This overarching need we have to explain ourselves, to defend who we are, right? It's again, it's appreciating, the good parts of us, even the weird parts. Thank you for using that word, Lisa. The weird parts of us, because we all have something. We all have something, right? It's balance. If you were perfect, it would be unbearable for the rest of us, first of all. So the fact that we all have something, and it's learning to embrace that too. Yeah, that's who I am. I'm not hurting anyone. It's just my little weirdness. That however it was evolved and created, because I didn't do it. But again, likewise, the kindness and the compassion and the wisdom. When someone compliments you and says oh, you're such a kind person, we're so quick, oh, not really, or somehow we kind of push back. But to even acknowledge, say thank you on behalf of all the people that were kind to me, on all the conditions that caused kindness to arise. I thank you for that. I appreciate it. Maybe you don't have to say that, but in your mind, know that, so that you can just say thank you. Thank you for saying that. They wanted to say something nice to you. We always push back. We're always pushing back on it. Everyone is arising through their causes and conditions. Your weirdness, you didn't create it. Right? And your good qualities, you didn't create those either. Now, we are still the heir to our karma, right? Any action, we receive the consequence of it, of course. But those actions, the more that we can acknowledge, and you've got to see this, it is paying attention to when you're making decisions. Start with little things. Food choices is a good one, because we do it several times a day. Notice you're looking at the menu, and when all of a sudden the waiter just arrives, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, that. And notice that you were going back and forth between two dishes, right? And then all of a sudden it came to you, it was your turn, and you just, what was it? We had, in fact, we'd gone out for breakfast with some friends a couple weeks ago, and it was just, I was kind of having a little giggle to myself, because when we'd walked into the restaurant, we'd run into some other friends, and they were having these, the two women had these pancakes and waffles and all these different flavors. It looked beautiful. And so when we sat down, Maria and Heather, who were with us, both said, well, I'm having what they're having. And so found it on the menu. And it took us a while, in fact, to find the actual thing that they had ordered. And of course, if we hadn't run into them, that's not what they would have ordered. And based on their conditions, if they hadn't been there and then we hadn't seen them, they wouldn't have ordered it. It feels like I made this conscious choice to make this decision. But if you hadn't seen it first, you wouldn't have ordered it. I mean, you might have, but maybe there was something else, another reason that was pushing you in that direction. There's so many things happening at a subconscious level, millions of bits of information coming in, of going through past experiences, past memories. So much information. We can't possibly know what was the final thing that I'll have this, I'll choose this, right? And it feels like I'm independently choosing this. And therefore, if I'm independently making all of these choices, my weirdness is independently me. There's something wrong with me, right? And if someone's attacking me, they would have a choice not to do that. So it must be personal. And I could have made other decisions in the past. So when we talk about letting go of regrets, allowing ourselves to be who we are, accepting who we are, really seeing others with compassion in our hearts, understanding they are the result of their causes and conditions. This is done through wisdom, seeing reality, seeing what is going on. So pay attention to that. Thank you so much for the donation, Hillary. Thank you. And just as an example, Hillary, because I see, actually, I think you were on before from Australia. The fact that I have Vegemite in my refrigerator and sound like an American and live in Mexico is because I'm originally from Australia. And even though we grew up in the States, I was born there, my mom would always bring, my parents who were Australian, Vegemite with them. Now, as a 58-year-old woman, if I had never tasted Vegemite, I would think it was the most disgusting thing in the world. But I love it. So causes and conditions. Most of you here, if you didn't grow up in Australia or the UK, would think Vegemite is disgusting. Causes and conditions. I'll just do one or two more questions here because we are going out to a late lunch with my mom and Maria shortly. Oh, and so Hillary, I'm just going to say, yeah, the fires. I mean, gosh, Australia is having, you want to talk about climate change. I mean, Australia, definitely feeling that on the front lines. A great practice here, and I know I say this all the time, but a practice here, Hillary, Tonglen. Do something useful. The worrying and the fretting, not helpful. Practice Tonglen for all those animals, for all those people that are frightened. Imagine breathing in their suffering, their fears, their worries, sending back healing white light. Use this as an opportunity to transform. And it can really help you to be okay with what's happening. Compassion is not turning away from suffering. It's about coming closer to it because it's not just one thing. In what's happening in the fires, just like in the flooding that happened in Australia and that we're having a lot of in California, which is my, San Diego, where I'm most recently from the last 30 years. There's a lot of acts of heroism that are happening there, a lot. And so the more that we can be with the suffering with compassion, imagining taking on their suffering and sending back healing white light, using this practice to help you be more compassionate. And you might find in there that might be enough, or you might find that there is something for you to do. All right, so Tonglen. And if you're not familiar with Tonglen, I have some classes on my teacher's page and a meditation on that. And I'm sure on Insight Timer there are tons of stuff on Tonglen, but that is the practice I would be recommending. Oh, and thank you, V. Thank you. Oh, my sister's saying, yes, my mom would send us to school with Vegemite sandwiches. Nobody wanted our Vegemite. Nobody wanted it. Okay, I'll just see if there's one more and then we will. Okay, we got to V, I think. Sorry. So for Matt, I'll just finish up on that. So for Lisa, so Tonglen. Here we go. is the practice. It's a Tibetan Buddhist practice. And so for Matt, the definition of free will. Free will, how I would describe free will, is this idea that there is something independent here making a choice. Something that is, while we can even say there's so much of us that's influenced by all the causes and conditions around us, whether someone's calling us in that moment, texting us in that moment, yelling at us in that moment, complimenting us in that moment, all of these different things that are influencing us. This idea that there is something here, somewhere here, that is independent of all of that, that can go one way or another. And so what I'm suggesting, I'm suggesting you look for yourself to see if this is true. Because if you think there is a part of you that is independent, and I get that there is a felt sense that I am making an independent decision here. Again, because thought is always coming in afterwards to explain why I did something. And it sounds so reasonable, right? And it probably could explain 80, 90% of it. But the final nudge of why we do one thing versus another, we cannot possibly know all of the causes and conditions that went into it. And if we think there is something independent here, that I am somehow not a part of all of this, well, then where does that take me? Back up into the separate self. And what I would suggest as part of your practice also, look for the one that's independent and making the choice. Self-inquiry practice. Where is it? Where is the part of me here that is separate from this world, from this universe? This is not meant to be an intellectual exercise. It starts that way through this dialogue. And then it is meant for you to look. And another great practice, if you go back and write out your timeline, how you ended up exactly where you are, your partner, or whether you don't have a partner, your career, where you live, all of the things that led you to where you are right now, to this moment being on an insight timer call. And then go back and look and go, okay, now why did that happen? If I had not gone to the bar that night and met that person, if I had not met this other person that set me up with my future husband, if I had not gotten this job here where I met this person, that then we went off and traveled over here, and then because of that, I moved over here. One little change, you would be somewhere else. There is no free will. And this idea of holding on to this part of us that's independent and separate just continues the illusion. But look for yourself. Look for yourself. You will not turn into a blob by acknowledging there is no free will, by seeing that there is no free will. That's the fear. I'm going to fall apart. I'm not going to do anything. No, you weren't doing any of it anyway. However you've been arising, all the things you like, all the things you don't like, all just arising and changing. The difference, and in fact, I will tell you, the decisioning and the choicing that happens when you recognize there is no free will only improves, because it's not based in desire and fear. Oh, what if I do the wrong choice here? Oh, I've got to think. Doesn't mean we don't think about things. That's part of the process. Brain processes happening, thinking happening. No thinker, thinking happening. And then all of a sudden, but there's kind of a looseness to it. Because all of a sudden, when the answer pops in your head, all of a sudden you just go, oh, that's it. Yeah. And then we just assume that somehow I made that happen. We don't know what it was. And I think there's something beautiful in acknowledging that as well. When we just go, thank you, Thank you, wherever that came from. Thank you for that idea for the class. Thank you, right? Because it's all interconnected, interdependent. Your being on the call, Matt, all of the millions and billions and trillions of conditions in the past that brought you on the call, that brought us to this definition again, right? The words that are coming out of this mouth. But look for yourself. It's not enough for me to say it. And I know we spend a lot of time looking at the ego and the separate self. This is part of it. It's the ego claiming afterwards why I did something. And us believing that that's the simple reason, that that's wholeheartedly the reason why. Definitely providing some of the reasons, for sure. But not this idea that there's something independent here, because if there is, then I can regret my choices. Then I can hate, someone for being unkind to me. Then I cannot accept who I really am. And I think understanding the implications of that is huge. But to get to those implications, you have to see for yourself. Pay attention. Pay attention to how things are arising in each moment. Notice if we're flowing. When we let go and we go, well, let's see what happens. There's a plan. Yeah, I have this little simulation. I can make a plan for the day. I knew I had to be on the call at this time. I know we're going to lunch in 20 minutes, so I need to wrap up the call, right? So I know all this. Okay, it's okay. But now let's see how it happens. Let's see how it all unfolds, right? And it's not my plan. It's this plan that's been arising, and we'll see how it all goes, right? And being open to it and seeing it and paying attention. Like, this is amazing, right? And you have a moment, you're all sitting around, and you're like, this is an amazing moment, how all this came to be. Appreciating it more, but paying attention, paying attention to that sense of free will. Okay. Oh, thank you, V. That's so nice of you. That's so kind, your words. Thank you. And so you're saying even if someone decided to be content regardless of conditions, can it be called as free will? No, that's not free will. The intention, an intention comes from a thought, right? So the thought, I'm going to be content, right? There has to be some kind of volition happening there, right? Will, right? Which we talk about in Buddhism. It's one of the 5 aggregates. Will, not free, but there's a will there, right? And it's a thought that kind of pops in there first. But you have no idea what your thoughts are going to be. So if we have no idea what our thoughts are, how are we directing that intention? Your intention to be content is based on causes and conditions. To even have that intention is based on causes and conditions. To have the intention to want to come onto a call like this and think, wow, this feels really good. It feels very calming and very peaceful. For some people, they would come on a call like this and say, this is torture. Why do you enjoy listening to something like that? They would not get it at all because of their causes and conditions. So your intention to be content is not your own. Be grateful that that's the intention. Be grateful. Thank you that that's the intention for this one, that how this arose, that however it came here, right? For this one, it was suffering. It was a great of self-created suffering, an enormous amount of self-created suffering that led me on a spiritual path 25 years ago. I mean, before that, if I count, I started meditating 25 years ago, practicing Buddhism, but definitely doing a lot of things, a lot of wasted things. Law of attraction, definitely went through all that for a while, thinking I could just if I could just have all my desires filled, then I'd be happy. Just inflating the ego. So our intentions are not our own. And thank you for bringing that up, because that's something that people will always go, but no. I could give all the reasons why you may or may not have come on this call today, and you go, but my intention was, that wasn't yours either. What you like to do, what you want to do, whether you want to change, whether you want to know the truth, whether you want to be awakened, it's the causes and conditions. Be grateful that those are your causes and conditions. Don't take ownership of it, because there is no contentment in that. This is where the ego is so clever, so tricky, just comes in all these little back doors. So clever.